Show me your face, God. It's indeed that we need you to fill this space. It's not rhyme nor rhetoric, God. We need you. Can't live without you, can't breathe without you, can't move without you, can't be here without you, can't be happy without you, God. We can't even be mad without you, God. Everything we do, we need you. God, in this preaching hour, as I attempt to stand as prophetic witness, help me. Help me, God. We pray and that your will is accomplished. In Christ's name, amen. In the book of Lamentations, the 3rd chapter. I'll be honest, in these moments this week, it pulls on the pastoral priestly role. And as I told you before, sometimes God changes the plan or what you thought you had planned out. And so pray with me, hear me, reason with me. As we pay particular attention to this particular text, first let me just thank God for those two sisters, amen. Thank y'all so much. Faithful, amen. Faithful. And what they do. I appreciate them. Appreciate you so much. Lamentations, the 3rd chapter. To get the full gist, you really need to read the first 2 chapters. So we'll briefly touch on them, but it gets to 19. Well, chapter 3, he's in a place of lament. The author of the text is sincerely questioning God, why? He says, 19, everything that's been happening to me, the thought of my affliction and my homelessness is wormwood and gall. He says, when my soul thinks about it, when my soul thinks about where I am, my soul is constantly bowed down within me. And 21, he says, but this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. That the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, and therefore I will hope in him. For the next couple of Sundays, we will engage in a sermon series entitled The Offspring of Hope. The offspring of hope. I must admit the events of the last week have taken my meditation, my preparation in a whole different place. For some reason, it seems like we are playing a record that's either broken or someone has inadvertently hit the repeat button. Because it seems as if every so often we are back in this place of anxiety, this place of fear, this place of frustration, this place of contempt. And for some, there is also the accompaniment of a vigilante mindset. Again, we are in the place of questioning. Things that continue to be mutually exclusive continue to inclusively weigh heavy on our hearts. We weep when the blood that is being poured out on the streets is culturally self-inflicted. We weep when the blood of African Americans, and we can call their names just from this week, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, is drawn from the hands of those whom we would seem to find safety because of an oath to protect and serve. Especially, not for all of them, Brother Spicer, but especially when it seems as if for some, the cause of rapid fire can be called by names of white supremacy, systemic racism, disregard for the African American human life. We weep that even in spite of perceived wrongs, even if there is some sort of understanding as to how this blow up and retaliation of this nature could occur, our hearts weep for the blood of the officers in Dallas, Texas, whose lives have been tragically cut short because of their affiliation and not because of their actions. And so here we are in this place. From my eyes, this is a place opposite of what we thought, a place opposite of where we desired, a place contrary to what we know it should morally be. From my eyes, this is a place that still seeks equality across racial lines, across gender lines, across socioeconomic lines, across perceived social status lines. It's not a place, it is a place not only seeking equality in our relational systems, but we are also in a place of attitudinal division from group to group that seems to conquer rather than unite. In other words, we got too many folks think they better than somebody else because of where they stand in life. From my eyes, this is a place where walking side by side is really a distant wish, and walking hand in hand seems like a never-ending fairy tale that even Disney has yet to write. This place is a far cry from the place where gospel artist Tamala Mann described. Because indeed, in this place, our hearts, they're not feeling again, but they're continuing to become numb. Instead of pain allowing us to stand, pain is the very thing that is crippling us. And instead of tears going away, tears are still flowing like mighty streams. And for a lot of us, this is just too much. We are tired of going through the cyclical pattern to try to prove the mantra that all lives matter should include African American lives. We're trying to prove the notion that it should be felt by everybody. We're tired of trying to argue our value in society not only to those who in judicial systems in uniform are striking us down, but even to our own brothers and sisters, how much value the life of our boys and girls has. And we're tired of trying to prove that nobody has the authorization to end a life except God. And a lot of us are oppressed. Listen, despite our material gain, we're still oppressed. Despite being able to move to the other side of the tracks, to make it relevant, despite some of us being able to move above Macon Road, despite being able to rub shoulders every now and then, we're still tired of an oppression that even as you move to the other side of the tracks, you're still being watched by your every move. And sometimes the rubbing of shoulders is just a mechanism to try to keep tabs. We are tired. But the very fact remains that as tired as we get, it seems like it will not stop. The more we cry, it seems like the more we have to cry. The more attention we try to bring to the matter, it seems like the more devices are brought in to take attention away. And the occurrence of what's going on is commonplace. It's so commonplace that it almost seems as if the only thing that can stop it is an all-out war or a providential act of God. And to many people, it seems as if war is the only answer. Hear me closely. Because for some it seems as if God has gone asleep to the trials and tribulations of the modern day. That's been the proverbial question that has resounded. Where is God in the midst of all of this? I can't lie and say that the question has not run across my mind. I was asked a question by one of our members. I've seen the sentiment on the question across the faces of many people. Social media asked the same question. I've seen the resolve to move away from prayer because it seems as if prayer has not been handling anything anyway. I've seen the notion to forego the religious community because it seems as if the religious rhetoric of the 21st century cannot hold an ounce of weight to the religious movement of the civil rights era. And because all of the symbols of the extension of Christ's arms are for the most part absent, it thusly seems as if God is not interested in stepping in anytime soon. The question is asked, why, God? Why are you allowing this to happen? Why won't you just do something about it? Why won't you make moves and waves? These questions are not, these questions for many, if you can't feel them in the move of the last week, in the move of the Black Lives Matter movement, and the moves of what's been going on maybe in your own life, you had these questions vested in your mind because for the sake of your living, you cannot figure out when is the time you're going to walk out of your own adversity. And often, seemingly, it's an adversity you probably think you don't deserve. And now you ask God, why? How long will it last? And today, knowing that there is a longing for some of these questions to be answered, I failed to come up with an answer that would probably adequately suffice for many of you. But the truth of the matter is I believe God is where God has always been. Throughout antiquity, God has governed a world full of triumph and full of tragedy, full of victory, full of defeat, full of joy, yet reeking with pain. And God has exercised God's sovereignty throughout the midst of the world, sovereignty that at times pushes a divine breakthrough, and sovereignty that sometimes pauses in the midst of obstacle. It's in this idea that the very core of Christianity is tried. What do you do when it seems as if the God you rely on won't show up when you need it? Seems as if in this moment we're thrust back into the annals of history, sitting there with the 3 Hebrew boys and saying, if your God is so powerful, let's try him and see what God is able to do in the midst of your fiery circumstance. And the question is, does anybody have the resolve to say, I don't know what God's going to do, but I know God is able? I'm getting ahead of myself. My answer is this. Reason with me. That in these moments when we're looking for God, maybe God has, and maybe God is showing up. Could it be that the power to push through these moments in life, or rather the God we've been looking for, is lodged in the vessels that are ours? Could it be that the God we've been looking for is trapped in the collective mindsets, yearning for these minds to come together and release the plan to eradicate the mess? Could it be that you and I are harboring this fugitive God? And our harboring, though it may not be intentional, it comes out of the distress of the situation where we feel hope is gone. Could it be that when we give up hope, when we give in to despair, is at that moment that the presence and the move of God within us is choked? The thing about hope, most are ridiculing it now. Most are saying we've been hoping too long, and hope has not gotten us anywhere. I beg to differ. And I offer that too often we looked at hope as a destination, when in reality, hope is a springboard to grabbing destiny and bringing it closer. In other words, if hope leads to a place of stagnation, that was not hope. That was simply wishful thinking. Rather, hope should lead to a place of action that manifests the desired destination. And so over the next couple of weeks, we want to look at the offspring of hope. I'm almost done. This past week, we've been in tune to the idea of bearing fruit on last week, because bearing fruit shows that the evidence of our relationship with God. And in the midst of what's going on in our world, it's appropriate in the coming weeks to investigate the hope that ought to come with being a child of God. You're already clear as to what it means to be an offspring. It's a descendant of someone or something, or rather a byproduct of something. And the move of this series is to investigate the offspring or the byproducts of hope that will move us, watch this, from places of despair to places, watch this, of action. And it's funny because the image that was in my head as I was preparing this, and I'll be honest, since Friday and mostly last night, the image that came into my head was that of the world champion Cleveland Cavaliers. Y'all know how much I dealt with this sermon for me to put Cleveland. They were down 3-1 in the championship. All of the analysts, including myself, suggested that it is impossible to come back on the defending champions, the Golden State Warriors, when you're down 3-1. And all I remember is the sports station kept referring to a conversation that the Coach Tyrone Lue, had with his ball players. He said, even though we are down 3-1, if you don't believe we can win, don't get on the plane. And that's what I'm saying throughout this experience. I know it looks bad. I know it looks like we won't stop killing and they won't stop killing. I know it looks like there's some stuff we're just going to have to live with. But if you're convinced of this, don't get on the plane. Don't join the fight. Don't be talking about we shall overcome. Just get out the way. This is why you can't fight without hope. Because if you fight without hope, you're fighting on the basis of technique and not passion. The issue with fighting on technique is that the wild technique gets boring and you lose interest and you bow out. But when you have hope, you're fighting from the mount of passion, and passion teaches me technique, and passion won't let me give up. And so the first offspring of hope, give me 5 more minutes. The first offspring of hope, listen, is that you have a chance to recenter. A chance to recenter. This is the first premise I need to make. Listen, hope is not devoid of reality, but rather hope sparkles in the midst of reality. In other words, had there not been some realities that were undesirable, hope would be useless because everybody would be happy with where they were. And so we look at this text. I'm moving quickly. We are brought to a place in history recalling the destruction of Jerusalem through the hands of the Babylonian Empire, and seeing the destruction, the pain of those in Jerusalem. It led to one to believe that the questions we are asking today about where is God, why is God allowing this, are the same questions that were being asked in Jerusalem when Babylonia was conquering Jerusalem. And in chapter 3, the author moves from this generalized tone. In chapters 1 and 2, he talks about from the city's perspective of what God was doing. And then in chapter 3, he starts talking in a more personal tone. First 2 chapters, he describes the degradation of the city. He describes in vivid detail the rise of the Babylonians, the enemy to God's people, and the fall of God's people. But then he gets to chapter 3, the conversation turns inward, and God is directly addressed. Watch this. The author contends that not only is God allowing this to happen, but the author contends that God is the reason why it's happening. In verses 1 through 20, the author finds himself in a place we talked about earlier, the place of wondering, the place of bewilderment, the place of asking, how can God be in any of this? How is God the author of all of this? Listen to the accusations in 1 through 20. How has he made my flesh and skin waste away? He has walled me in, I can't escape. He's put heavy chains on me. He's torn me to heavy pieces. He's filled me with bitterness. He robbed me of glory. He's cut me down. But then he gets to verse 20. After all this accusation, he gets to verse 20. And he says, but in spite of all of this, in spite of what it is now, there come some things to my memory. And it's this remembrance that begins to balance out everything that I went through in verses 1 through 19. It's this remembrance that causes him to recenter himself. Even as his soul is being bowed down, it's this memory that causes him to refocus and gets things back together. This is what I love about this text. It gives me room and capacity to be human, to wonder why God and what is God doing. Yet in the same passage, it gives me the capacity to recognize that there are moments, inexplainable moments, where my natural is overcome by a supernatural. And in the supernatural, some things my natural could not pinpoint nor remember, my supernatural brings to memory. And that's a word as we move to this movement, especially as people of African descent. There were moments when they said slavery would never end, but we made it. Y'all not praying with me. Moments when we thought the books on the law would not, the law in the books would not be changed. We thought that black only and white only signs will forever be amongst us. But somehow we made it. And I'm convinced as we begin to move from despair to action, I'm convinced that even in the midst of a new form of lynching, somehow we're going to make it. Because in my downcast soul, my supernatural brought back to a memory that we've been here before, faced the same amount of adversity before, but God made a way then. And I don't know when God will do it. I don't know how God's going to do it, but I just have hope that if God was able back then, God is able to do it now. This is what the writer said, and he said, I'm done. He says, because I remembered, I have hope. Well, writer, what did you remember? I remember that the love of the Lord never ceases. I have hope. His mercies are never ending. I have hope. His mercies are new every morning. I have hope because great is the Lord's faithfulness. I have hope. And when I begin to remember what God has done, how God has done it, I start looking at my challenges and saying, I have hope. Y'all don't want to pray with me. This is what I'm saying. If we're going to make some traction in this movement, if we're going to go from hope to despair, we got to go back and lean on something my ancestors used to say. In the midst of the storm, they simply said, I got a feeling. I got a feeling. It's not something etched in stone yet. It may not look like it right now, but I got a feeling everything is going to be all right. I don't know about you, but the fight is not over, because as long as he is alive, I got a feeling. I got a feeling. I got a feeling. Everything will be all right. We're standing. That's the first sermon. First, you got to believe it's going to be all right. You can't believe the report of CNN. Can't believe the report of Fox News. No, you sure can't believe Fox. But you got to be, the text says, who shall believe the report of the Lord? And I'm convinced that if they can kill him, I'm sorry, my Baptist coming out, on Friday night, I got a feeling they can kill him on Friday and he can get up on Sunday. There's nothing. Won't you high five your neighbor and say nothing too hard for God? We're standing. I'm sorry. It happened in the middle of the sermon. I just started remembering, and there was hope. Word, the message. Somebody in this movement, you've cried like I've cried. You've been angry. You ain't know what to do. You almost made the front paper yesterday, but your wife said we ain't gonna walk to veterans. We're gonna go home right now. But I still got a feeling. Can I be honest with you? This feeling might have to go past my earthly existence. I love what was said yesterday. He said sometimes you got to be content with planting shade trees. You may never experience the goodness of the shade, but somebody got to plant the seed. And it's my hope that God will be an umbrella of justice, will be an umbrella of equality. And all we're doing now is continuing to plant and harvest the seeds. Do you have hope that a seed can sprout up? That's the beginning push of the movement. A lot of folks are saying we're tired of praying. I argue you can't get tired of praying. I argue you got to do more than pray. But you can't get tired of praying. You can't get tired of hoping. Because when we try to identify with the civil rights movement as it began in the church, they ain't moved without praying. And it was something about understanding the God whom they serve. Watch this, the hope in the God whom they serve, the reason why they can shut down bus routes in Birmingham, Montgomery. It was the hope in the God they serve. It was the reason they believed that they could economically expose. It was because of who they believed in God that gave them the power to say, you know what, I work 20 miles from here. I'm either going to catch a ride, I ain't going in today, or I'm going to walk. Because my hope brings me to a place of believing action will suit this case. But the first question is, do you have hope? Do you believe? Do you believe we can turn around our young black boys, our young black girls? Do you believe it? It's not going to be easy. You can't stop at believing. But do you believe it? That's the question. Is there anybody in here who believes today? Listen, the doors to relationship are open.